you're feeling now. Maybe you don't even feel. If
Hi
heaven's so
everyone,
far
my name is
away
Laura
from
Chalaka. I
here.
am starting off brand new for you guys. I want to give you guys a little introduction of who I am, and I'll get right on to the topic of today's video. So again, my name is Laura Chalaka. I am in my last year of law school in the DMV area. I'm originally from California, and I thought that I really wanted to start a YouTube channel for girls who are interested in pursuing higher education, whether it be law school, med school, graduate school, whatever the case may be, something outside of college, going on to higher education, who still have some interest in fashion, music, beauty, makeup, whatever the case may be. Me personally, I am very much interested in fashion. I'm interested in music, and I want to be a lawyer. And so, if you want to go to law school, please stay tuned. I'll give you all the advice, the tips, the questions to be asking yourself. So, without further ado, let's hop right onto it. Law school. So, for those of you who may not be familiar, law school is a 3-year institution. So, you go to high school, you go to college. After college, you decide whether or not you want to go to law school, and law school is another 3 years of education. In order to go to law school, you must have finished college of some or similar to college. You have to take something called the LSAT, which is a standardized test, and you must have, somewhat of a good GPA, depending on the college that you want to go to, the law school that you want to go to, excuse me. So for me, I went to, and I can say this now because I'm no longer in undergrad, I went to UC Davis in California. I'm originally from California. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. Ever since I was in 4th grade, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I love everything about the law. I love arguing. I love debating. I love researching. I love writing. I love thinking, asking yourself these questions. So I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I went into undergrad with the major of political science, and then I added on the major of psychology. So I was both a political science and psychology major in college. Now, the one first advice that I can give you guys is it absolutely does not matter what you major in college to go to law school. Back then, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. What's closest to the law? Political science. I'm going to major in political science because it goes hand in hand with, law school and being a lawyer. No. Law school is its own beast. So when you're in undergrad, major in whatever you want to major in. Enjoy that time in undergrad because law school is its own beast. So there's no point in subjecting yourself to this, these heartache and, all these nuances of, I have to major in this, I have to. No, you don't have to major. You can major in art if you want to. You can major in chemistry. One of my best friend is a biochem major in an undergrad and is attending law school. There are people who major in English and attend law. It really does not matter. You can major in whatever you want to major in and still go to law school. So I would encourage everyone who's interested in law school to major in what you're passionate about and what you're interested about. If it is, pre-law, if it is psychology, if it is political science, cool. But if it's something completely different like drama or engineering, I would definitely recommend pursuing that. So that's the first thing. Of whether or not you want to go to law school, you should major in whatever you want to major in. Okay, so the big question is, should I go to law school? There are lots of things you should be asking yourself. The most important thing you should be asking yourself is, do I want to be a lawyer? Now, the caveat to that is that you don't have to be a lawyer to go to law school. You don't have to want to be a lawyer to be a law school. One thing that I've learned in law school is that you can your JD, which is the degree that you get when you finish, is so versatile, it's so general that you don't have to practice law in order to earn a JD. You can teach, you can open up your own business, you can volunteer, you can do whatever you want with a JD. It's just a way of having a more respected degree. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what do I want to do with this JD degree that I would be receiving in law school? Do I want to be an attorney or a lawyer, which is the same thing? Do I want to teach? Do I want to have my own business? Want to open my own practice? Think about, okay, where do I see myself in the next 5 years? It's important to map out, where do I see myself in the next 5 to 7 years? Because you may not need a law degree depending on where you see yourself. So it's definitely important to ask yourself, okay, where do I see myself in the next 5 to 7 years? So that's number one. Okay, asking yourself, where do you see myself? What do I want to do with this degree? That's the first thing. Second thing, do your research. Like, look into what it takes to be a lawyer, what it takes to go to law school, what is law school about. One thing that I did was I attended a lot of workshops, attended a lot of on-campus events and meetings. I went to a lot of the schools and toured and talked to the faculty. I was involved in, over the summer, I would involved in something called like pre-law boot camp. So you get a little taste of what it is to be in law school. Because, you may really want to be a lawyer, but you may not want to put the work in, because it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And I'll get to that in a different video, but law school is a lot of work. I went for me personally, I went to having really, really good grades in undergrad. I was able to get into a top-notch law school, and I went from that to, really struggling my first year of law school and asking myself, is this something, I had to ask myself this question, is this something I want to do? Because it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of thinking, it's a lot of volunteering and putting in your time and effort into extracurricular activities. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. So you got to ask yourself, am I willing to put the work in? And the only way you can figure that out is by doing your research, talking to people, touring these campuses and asking yourself that. So the first thing you should do is think about, okay, what do I want to do with a law degree? Where do I see myself in 5 to 7 years? Is law something that goes hand in hand in what I see myself? Second of all is doing my research. Am I willing to put in the time and effort that is needed in order to get into law school and to be an attorney? Because it is a lot of time and effort. If you're not willing to do that, I would advise you to either take some time off before you go to law school, or figure out something else. Go to graduate school, get your MBA, which are both difficult, but they're not as difficult as, say, law school. So the next thing to figure out, okay, should I go to law school? Finances. Okay, this probably can even be number one. Can you afford to? Are you willing to invest in your education to go to law school? Because it's not cheap. It is not cheap at all. And you have to think about the payoff, okay? So I'm just going to use kind of a general number. Let's say tuition to law school, and this is typically what tuition is, give or take. Tuition is probably $50,000 a year, not including the cost of living. The cost of living is a different number, but tuition is usually $50,000 a year. Okay. So typically your first year, you're not supposed to work because you're supposed to be focusing purely on going to class, purely on studying, purely on acing your final exam. And I'll talk about that in a later video. Law school, everything's typically based off, every course is typically based off one exam. So all your grades for, so say you're taking a class called contracts, which is one of the classes you would take your first year. Your grade in that class will be based off one final exam and only one final exam. So your whole grade is based off one test that you take at the end. So typically you're advised not to work in order to study and prepare yourself for this test. So you're not working Tuition's $50,000 a year, and it's a 3-year program. So 50 times 3, $150,000 a year without the cost of living. So the cost of living is its own beast. So typically, I go to school in the DMV area. The cost of living is probably $20,000, give or take. So you would add $20,000 a year to the $50,000. So it would round up to $70,000. $70,000 times 3. You do the math, which is $210,000 that you would be paying. Can you afford that? Most people can't. I can't. If you can, cool, more power to you. Definitely consider it. But if you can't, think about it. Okay, am I willing to take out loans for that amount of money? Will I have the means to pay those loans back? Will I have the grades and the job in order to guarantee that those loans will be paid back at a certain amount of time? Because one of the issues that I noticed that people run into is that, okay, they're willing to take out the loan, so they take out a loan for the 3 years. They might have accumulated loans of $150,000, not even mentioning your undergrad. So let's just say you're in $150,000 in loan. One of the things that I've noticed is that you go to law school and you struggle. You don't get good grades. You struggle, so you're not able to get the great summer internship at the big law firm that are paying you $3,000 a week. You're not able to do that, and so you find yourself graduating and you finish law school, but you don't really have a job. You don't have the best grades, so you're having to take a job that you may not necessarily want to take, where the pay is a little bit lower, which the pay is maybe $50,000. And a lot of you guys may be saying, well, $50,000 is a lot of money, but people in law school can make $160,000 straight out of law school. So compare the $160,000 that you can make to $50,000, and you can see there's a big gap, especially considering the fact that you're $150,000 in loans. So you're making $50K a year and you're $150K in debt. So you have to really consider about, so if you're going to take all these loans, can you guarantee or have a high probability, can you guarantee that you're gonna be able to pay that back? Also, obviously, there's loans. There's like what I previously said. There's also scholarships and grants. And depending on the school you go to, that's definitely an option. Usually, every law school will be willing to usually do give out grants and scholarships. I personally got both scholarship and grant, but it was nowhere near the full tuition. It was it was enough, but I'm still going to be a lot in debt, so don't worry. And I'll definitely talk about debt in a later video. But yeah, so schools will give out scholarships, grant, and loans. And those are mainly the 3 ways that you use to pay for school. So if you're thinking about going to law school, ask yourself, are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to, take out the loans? Do you have the resources in terms of grades and experience in order to get a scholarship? Those are definitely things to consider. So the next thing to consider about should I go to law school, and this kind of goes back to what I previously said, is this something that you're passionate about? You have to really ask yourself, am I passionate about this thing? Not to say that you have to be passionate about it, but it definitely does help to be passionate about. Do you have to really do your research and understand what is the law? What is law school? What will I be learning in law school? I think a lot of people kind of have this misconception. They watch Suits, they watch Law and Order, and they think that that's all it is. Or they watch now, the big one is How to Get Away with Murder. And believe me, I love me some How to Get Away with Murder. I love Viola Davis. I know I'm saying her name wrong, but I love her. But that's not what law school is. Law school, especially your first year, is you with this big book, sitting in class, confused. that's law school. Law school is not you solving murders. That's not law school. You know, that would be great if it's law school, but it's not law school. Like that's not what law school is. So you gotta ask yourself, am I passionate about this? And the only real way to know whether you're passionate about something is to do your research, is to volunteer, is to intern when you're an undergrad. And that's kind of what I did. I interned a little bit in government a little bit in undergrad. And I didn't particularly like government, but I knew that this is something that I could see myself doing in terms of, a different aspect of the law. So figure out whether you're passionate about it. Again, so if you're asking yourself, should I go to law school? You can ask yourself about, okay, is it something I'm interested in? Am I passionate about it? Do I have the grades? Do I really understand what law school really even is about? Do I have the means in terms of financial means? Am I willing to take out the loans? Am I willing to pay the money back? Do I have the means to pay the money back? These are questions to ask yourself if you want to go to law school. Another thing to ask yourself about whether or not I want to go to law school is, how do you put this? You have to be willing to be flexible. You have to be willing to sacrifice your time. So obviously in undergrad, you did sacrifice a little bit of your time, but undergrad was fun. You went to class when you wanted to go to class. You skipped class sometimes. You partied. You made moves. I made lots of moves in undergrad. I went to undergrad in Northern California, close to the Bay Area. I would literally get in my car, drive to San Francisco. Me and my friends, we drove to Las Vegas. Like, we made moves. In law school, depending on where you're at, I am fortunate enough to be in the DMV area next to Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of events, and nightlife is popping in D.C. But you can't get caught up in that. You cannot get caught up in that. I made the mistake of getting caught up in that my first year, and I'll tell you guys about that if you guys are interested. And I was taught a lesson. So you have to be willing to put in the time, the effort, the sacrifice. You're not going to be seeing your friends all the time. You may never see them, You're not going to be talking to your family all the time. You're not going to be partying, hardly ever. You are going to go to school. You're going to go to the library. You're going to go to sleep. And you're going to redo it all over again. And you have to be willing to do that. You really have to be willing to do that. So if you're not willing to do that, if you think this is a game, I wouldn't advise. I at least would advise taking some time off, working, kind of seeing how the real world is before going to law school.
She say that I'm Hollywood, I probably could show her something different than them niggas could. I be on a mission, I'm just trying to live, stay the same and keep that frame right and reap the benefits. You know how it be, you know how it is. You could see a ring, I know you love kids, let's take a vacation.